According to Vietnam's National Steering Committee for Natural Disasters Prevention and Control, extreme weather phenomena and natural disasters intensified and caused heavy damage in Vietnam and around the world in 2015 and early 2016. In particular, drought occurred across the country from late 2015 to early 2016, with extreme severity in the Central Highlands, the South Central and Southern regions. Land erosion was ubiquitous. Salt water intrusion occurred 2 months ahead of the normal period and reached as far as 90 kilometers inland. The exhaustion of water in rivers took place across the country, causing major damage in human lives and property. Between the start of January to the middle of May this year, extreme weather phenomena such as cold waves, drought and salt water intrusion resulted in destruction worth more than 9.7 trillion dongs across the country. This was bigger than the total damage in 2015, which exceeded 8.1 trillion dongs.
Theo các nhà khoa học phân tích thì cho biết là cái hiện tượng El Nino hoàn hành đến tới cái khu vực mà Đông Nam Á này sớm hơn và cái cường độ mạnh hơn, làm tác động lên các cái quốc gia ở trong khu vực sông Mekong.
To tackle the rise of extreme weather phenomena and natural disasters, Vietnam is asking for cooperation and support from many bilateral and multilateral partners around the world. The United Nations said it would mobilize $48 million from international partners for Vietnam to implement climate change mitigation measures in the south, central and southern regions of Vietnam, as well as to support most affected families. Besides, 22 international NGOs have signed an agreement with Vietnam's Union of Friendship Organizations. They have pledged to carry out 30 programs and projects between 2016 and 2019 in 13 heavily stricken provinces with a total budget of $12.3 million. The Vietnamese government is also boosting bilateral cooperation in the long term with many countries such as the United States, Japan, France, and especially the Netherlands. Hello and welcome to Sharing Vietnam. Vietnam has been fostering cooperation with many partners around the world in order to deal with the adverse weather conditions and the negative impacts of climate change. And in our program today, we will get to know about the strategic partnership between Vietnam and the Netherlands in order to adapt to climate change and ensure sustainable development. Our guest today is Mr. Tom Compier, the first Secretary on Climate Change and Water Management of the Dutch Embassy in Hanoi. Hello, Mr. Compier. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Well, Mr. Compier, it is said that the negative impacts of climate change have become increasingly obvious in Vietnam. What is your observation?
We have, on the one hand, we have the changes in the climate and weather patterns. On the other hand, we have our own impact on the environment. Vietnam has been rapidly developing. And those changes in the system also trigger adverse effects on water management, on the risk involved of flooding. Same for upstream developments in the Mekong or in the Red River. Both human-made and natural changes cause higher risk for the people living in, for instance, flood-prone areas, but also in areas that rely on agriculture and have limited water resources. So, given those changes, a rethink of how we defend ourselves against water, how we work with water, how we can utilize the water available for agriculture and so on. These are all essential things to look at again, because we've reached not just in Vietnam, but in many places in the world, we've reached the limits of what we can sustain with business as usual. We have to change our ways in dealing with water and climate change related issues.
Yes. How can the experience from the Netherlands be helpful for Vietnam in dealing with climate change and water management?
a couple of things happened in the Netherlands, especially in the last century. We had a big flood in 1953, and at the time we chose to defend our country with engineering works, thinking that basically the world system, the weather system, was stable. The climate was stable, so that if you know a certain event to occur once in 1,000 years or once in 10,000 years, you can calculate how high you have to build your dikes and your dams. We decided through large engineering works to protect our country against similar events reoccurring in the future. Then, while we built those big engineering works, two things happened. The first thing is that we realized that if you do such huge interventions by closing off river mouths and so on in your system, in your water system, the adverse effects of that are very difficult to predict. We would probably not take the same kind of measures now, knowing what they would also cause in adverse effects. That's one thing. And the other thing is, of course, that we now know that the climate is changing. So it's not a simple matter of we know how often certain events occur, and therefore we can calculate with very precisely how high our dikes would have to be and where we have to put our dams. We can't foresee exactly what the future will be like. So if we build concrete measures everywhere, then we run the risk that we cannot easily adjust to the changes that are occurring in the future. And that's something why we now in the Netherlands take a very different approach. We try to take small steps and be as resilient as possible, at the same time remain as much adaptive capacity in our system as possible, meaning that we try to accommodate water rather than fight it.
So what do you think of the change of the mindset in Vietnam regarding climate change adaptation?
Part of the Vietnamese planning process, the people that are involved in that, the way that they've been doing work in the Mekong Delta, a lot of the efforts have been geared to developing land, increasing the amount of rice that can be produced, so adjusting the water system to allow more productivity. And people have been trained for decades in that kind of work. And it is a slow change, try to accommodate new ideas, and this is normal. Is it happening? Yes, I think it's happening. I think that also Vietnamese leadership is asking the right questions.
In 2010, Vietnam and the Netherlands reached a strategic partnership agreement on climate change adaptation and water management. For nearly 6 years, the two countries have signed and executed many specific cooperation activities with active support from the government and research organizations of the Netherlands. Some major collaboration areas include graduate and postgraduate education on water management, climate and biology change adaptation, cooperation between Ho Chi Minh City and Rotterdam, water and climate services, dredging for small-scale irrigation canals. Especially, the Netherlands has helped Vietnam develop the Mekong Delta Plan based on the Dutch Delta Program. The plan provides a long-term vision and suggestions to develop the Mekong Delta in a safe, sustainable and prosperous manner.
Thì ngoài cái chính phủ Việt Nam thì một số những cái chính phủ như Hà Lan và những cái tổ chức nước ngoài đang tập trung vào để làm sao cho các đồng bằng sông Cửu Long để cải thiện lại cái đồng bằng sông Cửu Long, kể cả về xâm nhập mặn và chống úng ngập.
Besides the Mekong Delta Plan, the Netherlands has also helped Vietnam build the Ho Chi Minh City Climate Change Adaptation Strategy until 2100 and implement the Industrial Water Treatment Project in Da Nang City. In the coming time, the two countries are going to execute agreements between Hanoi and Amsterdam, Ho Chi Minh City and Rotterdam, implement dredging and urban water treatment projects, plan out water resources in the Red River Basin and Thái Bình Province. Vietnam's Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment also says the two countries will seek to increase business and trade exchanges between the two countries in water treatment. Well, Vietnam and the Netherlands have entered a strategic partnership on climate change adaptation and water management. So could you tell us about the significance of this partnership?
The Netherlands is in the forefront of an adaptive strategy. Vietnam is, let's be open about it, facing a huge problem with climate change, being one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the impacts of climate change, and is lacking the kind of funding that you would need to build a massive defense line. So it makes very much sense for Vietnam to look at an adaptive strategy that uses small steps and as much as possible tries to accommodate the changes in climate rather than fight the changes in climate. Also because of the financial constraints. And if then you're looking for a partner that is taking a similar approach that can help you in such a financially also effective way trying to deal with climate change, then the Netherlands is a logical choice.
Okay, so how has the partnership been, turned into reality over the past several years?
There are various issues that we look at, but I think the flagship, so to speak, of our cooperation is the Mekong Delta Plan, which was written by Monre and Mard with Dutch assistance, and which gives a set of recommendations how to sustainably develop the Mekong Delta, making sure that it not just now is a highly productive area, but it will remain a highly productive area, both important for Vietnam and internationally.
While the Netherlands has been supporting a number of environmental projects in Vietnam with a facility for infrastructure development or ORIO, so could you give us more information on the projects?
These projects look especially at water supply and sanitation. The kind of projects that have been developed with Vietnam on these. There is a link though with the water management and climate change related issues that we're talking about, and that is that the amount of water available in Vietnam is, although it seems abundant, is still limited and under pressure, and therefore working on sanitation issues, on water treatment issues is essential, and being able to reuse the effluent from treatment plants, for instance, for agricultural purposes and so on, is an essential step in helping drought-stricken provinces, for instance, to deal with the lack of water they have available. So good reuse, making reuse possible, avoiding pollution of the water that you have available. These are essential issues that we also work on through ORIO.
Mr. Compia, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing valuable insights.
My pleasure.
Well, that's all for our Sharing Vietnam today. Hopefully, Vietnam and the Netherlands will see further fruitful projects in the coming years in order to adapt to climate change and ensure sustainable development for future generations. Thank you so much for watching and see you again next time.